A big increase in booster jabs and second doses to protect against the new Omicron variant. Everyone over 18 will be offered a booster 3 months after their second jab, and 12 to 15-year-olds will be offered a second dose.
Our experience of fighting this virus has shown us that it's best to act decisively and swiftly when we see a potential threat, which is why we're building our defences and putting these measures in place without delay.
6 cases of the new Omicron variant have been detected in Scotland, 5 in England. There are likely to be more. The next 3 weeks will be critical to assess the impact of Omicron. In the meantime, we'll give you what answers we can. Also tonight, over 100,000 people are facing a 4th day without power in the aftermath of Storm Arwen at the weekend. But for some marooned in a pub by the snow, the storm brought a convivial 3-day lock-in. And Prince Charles is in Barbados as the island becomes a republic, cutting its ties with the monarchy after 400 years.
Coming up on Sports Day later in the hour on the BBC News channel, Arsenal and Netherlands striker Viviane Miedema wins the BBC Women's Player of the Year award for the first time.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. As the world watches and waits to see the impact of the Omicron COVID variant, here booster jabs are to be offered to everyone over 18. The gap between the second vaccine dose and the booster will be cut from 6 months to 3, and all 12 to 15-year-olds will now be offered a second vaccine dose. The government's Deputy Chief Medical Officer, Jonathan Van Tam, says it's pretty likely that vaccine effectiveness will be reduced by the new variant, but hopefully only to a small extent when it comes to preventing severe disease. As the number of cases increase in the UK and around the world, scientists believe it will take about 3 weeks to understand the effects of Omicron. Our health editor, Hugh Pym, has the latest.
Boosting the boosters, like those being given in Derby today. That's now the official response to the new variant. Experts have told ministers that as well as all adults being offered booster jabs, the gap between the second dose and the next should be slashed to 3 months. The message is that with the chance that vaccines won't be so effective against Omicron, more immunity is needed.
We therefore want to provide boosters early enough such that it is before any possible wave. I'm not here predicting that there will be a wave of the new variant, but should there be a wave, we want to be in the best possible position.
That urgency, he said, was why the time between second and third doses should be cut, and a 3-month gap would still mean good protection. We asked people in Birmingham for their reaction.
As soon as we can get everybody vaccinated, then it can make everywhere safer, more places can open up.
It reaches out to younger people, and if it helps, then it's, a positive thing, really.
With a few cases of the new variant being confirmed in Scotland as well as England, the First Minister made clear there was a need for extra caution.
While we all hope that the emerging understanding of it will reduce rather than increase our level of concern, there is no doubt that this presents potentially the most challenging development in the course of the pandemic for quite some time.
At Westminster, the Health Secretary explained why new restrictions were needed, including tougher rules on face coverings in England.
We're building our defences and putting these measures in place without delay. Scientists are working at speed, at home and abroad, to determine whether this variant is more dangerous. And I can assure the House that if it emerges that this variant is no more dangerous than the Delta variant, then we won't keep measures in place for a day longer than necessary.
But Labour said the government should have gone further.
Keeping masks in place would always have been our plan A. Will the Secretary of State extend the use of masks to hospitality and other settings? Or does COVID not spread in pubs?
The new rules on masks in shops and public transport in England will come into line with the rest of the UK tomorrow. This butcher in Louth in Lincolnshire isn't happy.
Many people now are fed up of the situation and don't really know whether they agree with the masking situation. So you're going to have problems with customers facing each other.
Children at an Essex school are being tested because of a link to a new variant case. More generally, face masks are now being recommended in communal areas at secondary schools and colleges in England. They're already required in Scottish schools. So there's a lot for the health service to think about as they're asked to ramp up the rollout of the booster vaccination programme and care for patients as winter sets in. Until more is known about the new variant, the NHS can only focus on patients coming through the doors. And although hospitals are under a lot of pressure, COVID numbers are well down on this time last year and considerably lower than in January, largely thanks to the success of the vaccines. These are uncertain times, but while officials argue it's not all doom and gloom, some ministers have been stressing people should plan for Christmas as normal. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
So scientists are now in a race to establish whether the new variant is more transmissible than the current Delta variant and whether it causes more severe disease. They'll also be assessing its impact on the effectiveness of vaccines. Our medical editor, Fergus Walsh, has more.
After Alpha, Beta, Gamma, Delta comes Omicron, which scientists think could be the worst variant yet. So, is Omicron more transmissible? It appears to be driving a rise in infections in South Africa, but it's too early to be certain what's happening, as cases only started increasing 10 days ago from a very low level. The World Health Organization said Omicron shows why the world needs a new global agreement on how to prevent, prepare and respond to pandemics.
We should all be wide awake to the threat of this virus. But Omicron's very emergence is another reminder that although many of us might think we're done with COVID-19, it's not done with us.
Another key unknown is whether Omicron causes more severe illness. Doctors in South Africa say they've been dealing with mild infections from the variant, but cases there are mostly in young adults. The real test will be when Omicron starts moving into older, more vulnerable people. Perhaps most crucial of all, will vaccines still work? Current COVID vaccines are based on the original Wuhan strain of coronavirus and train the immune system to recognise the spike protein on its surface. The virus has changed considerably, but the antibodies the vaccine creates still work. Omicron has more mutations than any variant so far, and there's concern that it may be able to bypass our initial defences and cause infection. But even if it does, another part of the immune system, T cells, should give significant protection against severe disease.
I do not want people to panic at this stage. If vaccine effectiveness is reduced, as seems pretty likely to some extent, the biggest effects are likely to be in preventing infections, and hopefully there will be smaller effects on preventing severe disease.
Can we test for it? Omicron has a different genetic signature to Delta, which often shows up on PCR tests, but only about half of UK labs can pick up this signal. Gene sequencing will also help track the spread of the variant here. We all want to know how much of a threat Omicron poses, but it'll be 2 to 3 weeks before science gives us those answers. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
The government's latest coronavirus figures show there were 42,583 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period. On average, there were just over 43,000 new cases reported per day in the last week. The latest figures show there were 7,530 people in hospital being treated for coronavirus on Friday. 35 deaths were recorded. That's of people who died within 28 days of a positive COVID-19 test. On average, in the past week, 120 COVID-related deaths were recorded every day. On vaccinations, nearly 17.9 million people have now had a booster jab. Since the discovery of the new variant, the government has introduced new regulations. Our health correspondent Sophie Hutchinson has been looking at what those new rules are and how they might affect you.
What are the changes to the rules on face coverings? Well, from tomorrow, wearing a mask in England becomes a legal requirement again. They'll be compulsory in shops and on public transport. And in addition to that, from today, all secondary school pupils were strongly advised to wear masks in communal areas, along with staff and visitors to all schools and childcare settings. But in the other 3 UK nations, face masks have already been mandatory on public transport and in other indoor settings, including in restaurants in Scotland and Northern Ireland. What do you do if you're a close contact of an Omicron infection? Well, the rules for close contacts have been tightened for Omicron. If you're told you may have been exposed to the new variant, whether you're fully vaccinated or not, you will have to self-isolate for 10 days. What are the new rules around arriving in the UK and when do they come into force? From 4 a.m. tomorrow, anyone entering the UK will have to take a PCR test within 48 hours of arrival and self-isolate until they get a negative result. And only UK and Irish citizens will be allowed to return from red list countries and will have to pay for and quarantine in a government-approved hotel for 10 days. Will the government ask people to work from home? In Scotland and Northern Ireland, ministers have been strengthening the message about working from home and asking employers to help wherever they can. In Wales, people are also being asked to work remotely. But in England, there is no message about trying to work at home. Instead, ministers say the additional precautions that we're now taking should help to slow the progress of the new variant.
That was our health correspondent Sophie Hutchinson there. Now, more than 100,000 homes across the UK are without power tonight for a 4th day in the wake of Storm Arwen that battered the UK with winds close to 100 miles an hour. Worst affected, with 32,000 people still without power, are these areas of the northeast of Scotland. All schools in Aberdeenshire are closed and they'll stay shut tomorrow. In England, 29,000 people across the northeast, Yorkshire and Lincolnshire are still affected by power cuts. Our North of England correspondent Fiona reports.
Battling the elements. But this is indoors. The Cross Hill nursing home in County Durham has been without power for 3 days, and they're trying to keep warm any way they can. A neighbour donated this small patio heater.
To get everybody away from the coldest place you've ever wished to be in, suddenly very cold, from the storm.
They come round now through the night every hour.
How much do you want the electricity to come back on?
Oh, I'd love it to come on. I think we all would, and I think the staff would, because they've had very hard work with it. I don't think some of them have hardly slept much.
Some staff are even taking food away to cook it in their own homes, but they're frustrated too.
It'd be nice to know how long. If on Friday we knew it was going to be a few days, then obviously our contingency would have been different from the fact that we're going hour by hour. It's not just our residents who are at risk, which I've said, it's also the fact that we are quite lucky because we are all together and we've got a lovely community. What about the poor old person, vulnerable person who lives on their own, who nobody knows about? They are potentially the people who they're going to find in a few days, having not unfortunately survived this.
We really feel for our customers in these circumstances, and our teams are really doing their very best to get people with their lights back on. So I ask for people to be patient with us. We are really trying our very best to help them, and we're going to be there for them, and we'll keep them informed as to how we go.
The effects of Storm Arwen are being felt across the UK. At this nature reserve at St Abbs in Berwickshire, around 800 grey seals have perished. In Aberdeenshire, residents in Torfins are bracing themselves for a third cold night. Stalls have been set up with hot food and drinks. In Abergele and Conwy, ITV have confirmed the I'm a Celebrity programme will be scrapped for a third night while work continues to repair damage there. Back at the nursing home, more help has arrived. A massive generator donated by the local fun fair.
I'd just like to give something back, you know, I don't mind.
Kindness is keeping them going. In these pandemic times, it's the community, once again, that's helping to keep people safe. Fiona Trott, BBC News.
Coming up next,
County
the BBC
Durham.
News. The time is 6:15. Our top story this evening. The government has announced a big increase in COVID booster jabs and second doses to protect against the new Omicron variant. Still to come, the father of 8-year-old Safi Rose Russos, who died in the Manchester Arena bombing, says the response was shameful and inadequate.
Coming up in Sports Day in the next 15 minutes on the BBC News channel, we're going to hear from the England cricket captain Joe Root, who says he's been in touch with Azim Rafiq, the former Yorkshire teammate, who claims he was the victim of racism at the county.
Prince Charles has arrived in Barbados to mark the moment it severs its ties with the Queen. The Caribbean island has had the monarchy as head of state for nearly 400 years. Tomorrow it will become a republic, but will remain in the Commonwealth. Celestina Olulode reports from Barbados.
Gearing up for a moment in history, this island nation is making a strong statement about how it sees itself.
Independence always.
The Prime Minister of Barbados says the time has come.
We believe that the unfinished business ought not to go past the 55th anniversary of independence. I am one of the biggest respecters of Her Majesty, but equally, I need to know that my people can also do the same thing and respect the same thing.
A nation with a complex past, slave ships once docked here, Africans brought and exploited by the British.
And it's the sugarcane fields where many were forced to work, cutting down the crop before it was processed. The backbreaking labour led many to die young.
After slavery came to an end in 1834, Barbados remained a British colony. Despite gaining its independence in 1966, the Queen has remained the island's head of state, but that's about to change. The transition comes at a time of uncertainty. The pandemic has had a sharp impact on this island's economy, which relies heavily on tourism.
We need to be free.
But people here still have strong views about becoming a republic.
It changes nothing. Is life going to be better tomorrow? Okay, we are going to be a republic. Is it going to be better? Are the people still going to be living from paycheck to paycheck?
But Sharon's daughter, Lashawna, sees things differently.
For me, becoming a republic means we end that subservience to England and the monarchy and so on.
Signs of this island's colonial past are dotted throughout, but there are plans to introduce new symbols of national pride. For now, a ceremonial welcome. Prince Charles will attend official events to mark the occasion, a controversial move for some. But the most crucial part of the story of a nation that's fought hard to stand tall on its own is how young Barbadians view themselves and look back at this moment in the future. Celestina Olulode, BBC News, Bridgetown, Barbados.
The father of the youngest victim of the Manchester Arena attack has said that the response to the attack was shameful and inadequate. Safi Rose Russos was 8 years old when she was killed. The public inquiry heard how Safi asked if she was going to die. Her father, Andrew Russos, said that instead of help from the emergency services, she just got an advertising board and untrained people. Judith Moritz reports.
Safi Rose Russos loved pop music, especially Ariana Grande. She was so excited when she got tickets to the Star's Manchester concert for Christmas. She went on a girly night with her mum, Lisa, and sister, Ashley. The three were in the foyer when the bomb exploded. Safi called out for her mum and lay on the floor for half an hour. There were no stretchers, so she was taken down these stairs on a hoarding and a passing ambulance was flagged down. Her father, Andrew, arrived at the arena and had no idea where his little girl was.
The response on that night was shameful and inadequate. Everyone in that sitting room was let down, and the people that excused it should feel shame. What Safi went through, I will never forgive. That poor little girl hung in there for someone to come and help her. What she received was a bloody advertisement board and untrained people doing the best they could.
Safi was drifting in and out of consciousness. Those with her kept urging her to stay awake, but the little girl realised what was happening and she asked a paramedic, "Am I going to die?"
I remember thinking, help will come soon, just stay where you are.
Lisa Russos was severely injured and couldn't reach her daughter.
I want to thank those that tried to help Safi that night and for being with her. I also want to say to the professionals like the emergency services and MI5 that this inquiry isn't about protecting your job, your reputation or your uniform. We understand the sheer panic and fear you were faced with that night, but until you admit the failings, how can there be a positive change?
Safi died more than an hour after the explosion. Experts disagree over whether she might have survived had her emergency care been different. Judith Moritz, BBC News, Manchester.
The Scottish child payment will double to £20 per week from April. The First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has told her party's online conference that it will involve hard choices elsewhere, but that eradicating child poverty is essential to Scotland's future. She also pledged to begin the process to allow for another referendum on Scottish independence by the end of 2023. Here's our Scotland editor, Sarah Smith.
With people's minds on COVID and what Omicron could mean for Christmas, this is not the season for a hard sell on political ideas like Scottish independence. So Nicola Sturgeon urged caution and emphasised that the pandemic is her top priority, while also announcing more money for GPs and increased child payments for those receiving benefits.
I am very pleased, indeed proud, to announce today that our budget on the 9th of December will fund the doubling of the Scottish child payment immediately from the start of the new financial year. The Scottish child payment will increase to £20 per child per week, 4 times the amount originally demanded by campaigners from April.
Nicola Sturgeon is scathing about Boris Johnson's leadership, accusing him of undermining the powers of the Scottish Parliament and condemning a political system that allows someone like him to become Prime Minister.
I defy anyone to look at the broken, corrupt, self-serving Westminster system that we are currently part of and conclude that it provides a secure basis for the future of Scotland. So I would not be discharging my duty to the people of Scotland if I did not seek to keep the promise on which we were elected, to offer the people of Scotland the choice of a better future through independence.
The campaign for Scottish independence has been overshadowed by the pandemic, but has not gone away. Nicola Sturgeon may not be able to push for another referendum right now, but remains determined to have a vote within the next 2 years.
In the course of next year, I will initiate the process necessary to enable a referendum before the end of 2023. And just as importantly, our party will set out afresh the positive case for independence. We will outline the opportunities and advantages that independence will open up.
The people of Scotland should be allowed to decide the country's future, said the SNP leader, telling the Prime Minister not to try to prevent a vote on independence. But in a pandemic, debate over Scotland's place in the UK must wait until the worst of the crisis has passed, and no politician can say when that might be. Sarah Smith, BBC News, Glasgow.
A 14-year-old boy has appeared in court charged with the murder of a 12-year-old girl in Liverpool last week. Ava White was stabbed in the city centre on Thursday and suffered what police described as catastrophic injuries. The boy, who can't be named for legal reasons, was remanded in secure accommodation and is due to appear at Liverpool Crown Court on Wednesday. A memorial service has been held for Police Sergeant Sgt Rotana, who was shot dead in a custody centre in Croydon last year. Sergeant Rotana's funeral took place last November, 2 months after he was killed, but had to be kept small due to the pandemic. Around 200 officers dressed in full black ceremonial uniform lined the memorial route in central London. In New York, a jury has been selected to hear the trial of Gillen Maxwell, accused of grooming and recruiting underage girls for the late financier and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. A former girlfriend of Epstein, the 59-year-old faces 8 charges of sex trafficking and other crimes. She denies all the charges, but could face the rest of her life in jail if convicted. The trial is expected to last 6 weeks. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, is in the process of reshuffling his shadow cabinet. The move appeared to come as a surprise to the party's deputy leader, Angela Rayner, who was giving a speech about government conduct when the news emerged. She told reporters she didn't know the details. Let's speak to our political correspondent, Chris Mason, who's at Westminster for us. Chris, what more can you tell us?
Yes, hi Fiona. This was meant to be a speech where Angela Rayner would focus on parliamentary standards, try and focus on what she described as Conservative corruption. But as she stood up to speak, it quickly became apparent on social media that there was a reshuffle underway within Labour's team, and Angela Rayner appeared blindsided by it. Now, afterwards, both her team and Sir Keir Starmer's team were expressing irritation at each other. They acknowledged that they had met briefly face-to-face this morning. Sir Keir's team saying that Angela Rayner knew the reshuffle was coming today. So Angela Rayner's team saying that they hadn't been consulted about it. Why does all of this matter? Well, Angela Rayner is directly elected as Labour's deputy leader. In other words, she can't be sacked by Sir Keir Starmer, and this is the second reshuffle in a row where it's been publicly obvious that they are battling against one another, rubbing up against each other in a pretty irritable manner. What about the reshuffle itself, though, you might ask? Well, we still, all these hours on, don't know a great deal about it. What I can tell you is Lisa Nandy, who has been the Shadow Foreign Secretary, widely seen as one of the party's best communicators, she will move to shadow Michael Gove on the whole issue of what the government calls levelling up, with more details about the reshuffle expected this evening.
Chris at Westminster, thank you. 60 customers and staff have finally emerged after 3 nights marooned in Britain's highest pub. The lock-in at the Tan Hill Inn began on Friday evening when Storm Arwen brought heavy snow to the Yorkshire Dales. That night, an Oasis tribute band was playing and the musicians had been stuck there too. Our North of England correspondent Danny Savage reports.
Welcome to what many people this weekend saw as the most enviable location in the land. At the Tan Hill Inn, they sorted their priorities by digging through the snowdrifts to the front door and then locking it. They'd come to see an Oasis tribute band who, some might say, had a good weekend.
But there's worse places to be stuck, do you know what I mean? And everyone was just brilliant. Staff brilliant, customers were brilliant.
Absolutely, yeah, they've looked after everyone no end really. Yeah. And it's been almost like Blitz Spirit again, you know, so it's magical really, lifetime memories as well. So.
We'll do a reunion, but we'll do it in the summer next time. Yeah.
Take care, it's been lovely.
Nicola, the pub manager, was sorry to see them go. She realised late on Friday night that this was going to be a weekend like no other.
So the drifts were causing most of the issues more than anything, rather than just it being the snow. And I thought, yeah, these people are not going home. We've been doing karaoke, watching movies, playing board games, pub quizzes, chilling out.
Today, the road out just about became passable, and a 4th night at the inn was avoided. Lots of people saying this must have been the best weekend of your life, locked into a pub for 3 nights. Has it been?
It's heaven. It's something I'll never ever forget.
What was it like with a load of strangers stuck in a remote pub?
Well, it was just fantastic community spirit, honestly.
Really good. That talking about having a reunion, I'm not sure I'll be back.
And so they dispersed 3 days later than planned. But what a weekend they had. Danny Savage, BBC News, Tan Hill.
I particularly like the guy saying that they might have a reunion. I'm not sure I'll be back. What about you, Ben? Tell us about the weather.
Well, at least they had refreshments, Fiona, I suppose. Look on the bright side. But you don't need me to tell you after watching that. It has been really cold lately. We've had another very cold day across many parts of the UK. Today, in fact, at Leek in Staffordshire, temperatures this afternoon were stuck just a degree above freezing, still with some snow on the ground. However, things have started to change. More cloud has been spilling in from the west, and with that, some milder air. So in western Scotland this afternoon, yes, it was cloudy, a bit murky, but temperatures we're up at 10 degrees, and that process of milder air spilling in from the west will continue through tonight. A lot of cloud, some outbreaks of patchy rain and drizzle, but after an early frost in some eastern parts, temperatures by the end of the night, look at this, 9, 10, 11 degrees. It will feel very, very different for most of us by tomorrow morning, but we will wake up to largely cloudy skies. That cloud producing some outbreaks of rain and drizzle at times, especially up towards the north and in the west. A little bit of brightness here and there. And then through the afternoon, this band of heavier rain will swing in towards Northern Ireland and western Scotland with a strengthening wind. But afternoon temperatures up to 11 or 12 degrees away from the far northeast of Scotland, where that cold air will cling on. Now, as we go through tomorrow night, we have to keep an eye on this one, an area of low pressure that will be deepening as it crosses the UK. This could bring some quite windy weather actually through Tuesday night and into Wednesday. At the moment, it doesn't look like we'll see anything like the strong winds we had over the weekend, but this does need watching. Parts of southeast Scotland, northeast England could see some very blustery winds, maybe touching gale force for a time. That's certainly not wanted in that part of the country. And then as we go through Wednesday, well, the winds go back round to northerlies. So we start to bring some colder air back into the picture, some wintry showers, especially in northern Scotland, snow to quite low levels here, and those temperatures dropping away once again. It's a real up and down story temperature-wise this week. Towards the end of the week, Thursday brings this little ridge of high pressure, some drier weather. Then this frontal system pushes in from the west, a bit of rain and some snow for a time, Thursday night into Friday for some of us. And then behind that, yes, it'll turn a little bit milder again. So it's going to be quite hard to keep track of the temperatures this week. They'll be up and down, but certainly milder tonight and tomorrow. Fiona.
Well, that's something. Ben, thanks very much. A reminder of our top story this evening. The government has announced a big increase in COVID booster jabs and second doses to protect against the new Omicron variant. That's all from the BBC News at 6. It's goodbye from me, and on BBC One, we can join the BBC's news teams where you are. Bye-bye.